All right. All right, let's look at a couple of other more complex ways of extracting valuable minerals from the rest of the stuff. And one of these that's another really kind of cool one is solvent extraction electrowinning, SEEW. So what's done in this case? First, we leach some of the valuable material from the ore. So we have a leach pad here. You can see this black is an impermeable liner, and then these are basically sprinkler lines. But we're not watering it with water, we're watering it with some kind of chemical that will dissolve out the material we want, whether it be gold or copper or whatever. And at the bottom, underneath all of this, there's basically a drain that catches all of that liquid that moved through that ore, dissolving all the valuable stuff, and that gets drained away to our processing facility. So we leach the material from the crushed ore. And so now we have something called leachate, which is basically a liquid that has our stuff dissolved in it. And so we use a solvent to extract the material from the leachate. And then there's this thing called an electrolytic procedure. It precipitates material onto cathodes. Okay, so this is really the fun part. So this solvent, which has all our material, all our valuable stuff, basically it's all in liquid, right? It's dissolved in this liquid. It sits in a swimming pool, basically. I mean, that's the best way of looking at it. It's a swimming pool. Don't jump in it. It's probably going to be acidic and nasty and stuff. And there's another reason not to jump in it. So what we're going to do next, we're going to have an anode and a cathode. And we zap this pool of solvent with electricity, and this makes, in this case my example was copper, this makes the copper basically want to plate that cathode. And this is what one of the places looks like. These are some of those cathodes, and you can see it has that copper color on it. So these were just before sitting in this pool of water, solvent down there, getting zapped with electricity, making the copper plate that. And so then after a while, once we have a nice copper plate on there, we pull it out and we pop these plates off, and it looks like that. And that is all pure copper sitting there. And it's kind of neat how you can go from a rock that doesn't look like it has anything valuable in it, crush it up, you know, dissolve some stuff, zap it with electricity, and you get pure copper. All right, but in all of these processing techniques that we've done, the whole point is we're separating the valuable material from the stuff that's not that valuable. And the stuff that's not that valuable we call tailings. That's kind of a leftover stuff that we don't really have any purpose for. And so we need to figure out how to get rid of that. Well, at the iron mine, where I used to take my students on a field trip, this is their tailings basin, so that's all the stuff that's not valuable after they've separated the iron away from it. And in the old days, this is Leadville, Colorado, which was very active in the late 1800s. In those days, there were no regulations, environmental regulations of what you had to do at your mining properties. And so there, people would pretty much just dump the tailings, dump the stuff that's not valuable all over the place. And in other locations, before regulations, you might still see open shafts that you can fall into. Because, again, there were no regulations of how do you clean up, what do you do once you're done mining there. Well, today, things are different. So this is basically our tailings at this iron mine. And because in the US you have to reclaim the land now, right? There are laws governing how reclamation is going to be done. We're going to see what happens to this tailing basin after reclamation. This was a tailings basin just like that. And this is about 7 years after reclamation. And I bet if I didn't tell you that was a mining location, you probably never would have guessed. And that's because they're required to plant native vegetation, they're required to make the landscape look more natural after the mining process. Now, how they did that, how do you get plants to start growing on this surface where it's just this kind of broken up rock and stuff? In this case, it's kind of neat. There was a paper mill not that far away. And there's a byproduct of paper making, this like weird pulpy stuff that the paper mill needs to dispose of that actually is very good for plants to grow in. And so the mining company got a bunch of this byproduct from the paper mill, covered the area with it, and then planted the seeds. And the seeds were able to use that initial paper mill byproduct to get established, and then as they're growing, they're basically becoming part of the soil forming process. At a mine up in Colorado and Climax, is a molybdenum mine. They did a reclamation where they took their tailings basin and they went to the local wastewater treatment plant and asked them for all of their biosolids. And biosolids are basically the solids that you flush down the toilet. And those were spread over the tailings basin area as the fertilizer to get the plants growing. And now that tailings basin is a home to like herds of elk and things. So if you reclaim things right, it can actually look quite nice. So what do we have to do in reclamation? We have to remove the surface facilities. Right, remove the shaft house, the office buildings, the mechanics areas. You have to remove all that. You have to replace the topsoil, and I just went over two ways that they work on getting topsoil developed, whether it be the biosolids or the paper byproducts and things to get the plants established. You have to add native vegetation. If you destroyed any wetlands, you have to recreate them about 1.5 times whatever was destroyed. And that's because wetlands can act as like a natural filtration system. So having those wetlands around can be very good for the hydrology of the area. And then you're going to have continued monitoring. Often this can last for decades, making sure that the plants grow well and that there's no pollution that we did not think of. And so for decades afterwards, we can monitor these mine sites. I want to give you an example of a place that was reclaimed. This is in Ladysmith, Wisconsin. This is Flambeau Mine. And that was while it was in operation, and there it is after it was reclaimed. And now there's like places you can walk and stuff. So before and after. So I just wanted to finish this. You're not going to get a random picture of the day. You're going to get several random pictures of the day. They're not that random this time. This is a class that I used to teach, and it was drilling and blasting. And it's fun, and I just want to show it to you. So this is what actually happens at a real mining company, except they do it on a much bigger scale than what we did. So you figure out where your ore is going to be. You remove the overburden. Basically, you tell the students to get in there and remove the overburden. You drill. So that's our drill. Of course, I showed you at the big open pit copper mine, they've got these big drilling rigs. You might drill different patterns depending how you want to break the rock. And so we have 5 holes there, and we are now going to put dynamite in. I think that was dynamite that time. You might also use ANFO. And so there we're making a place where we can put a blasting cap in. And there we've put the blasting cap in, and we're putting the explosive into the drill hole. And we're very carefully using a wooden rod to do that. You don't want to use anything metal because you don't want any sparks. That would be a really bad day. And there we're wiring everything together. And there we're making sure that our wiring is good. And this is some blasting mats over top. to keep the debris down and really focus the explosion in the ground. And this is the really, really important part. This is we're going to move to a safe location. And there you go. There's the blast, and there's one of the blasting mats. You can see these rocks flying around. This was, I still remember, my husband's going to laugh about this one. This one was the one that we were standing there, and all the students were happy because it's the first one they've ever done. And I'm like, I'm happy. Everything like did what it was supposed to do. And then a rock landed behind us. And you're kind of like, oops, we should have moved to a safer location apparently. And that's what happened. And then we could go in there and pick around for cool little pieces of copper and stuff. And so anyway, I wish I could teach you guys that, but I can't. So that's it for today.